Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is going to be a very special video and I'm very excited about this. Probably my most favorite video. I've put a lot of time into making this video because I believe this has the potential to change your entire career trajectory for the better. I'm going to be busting a lot of myths that are out there. What are the right things to do? What are the wrong things to do? And I'm going to truly show you what it takes to be a product designer. If you want to go up the ladder and work at really big startups and companies, and even companies like Google and Apple and Amazon, what does it take? What do they look for? And how can you change your mindset and behavior of thinking and working as a product designer to reach there? A lot of people believe product design is an easy profession. It is easy to grow. Well, let me tell you, it is not. It is ridiculously hard. It's a very skilled profession that requires a certain skill set. And if you are in the beginning of your career, training yourself and doing the right things is very important because time is of essence. It becomes really hard to get your fundamentals strong later on. So you'd rather spend all that time in the early stages of your career so that you don't have to spend so much time figuring things out later. Anyway, a quick note, make sure to check out the description or just hover on the video if you want to see all the chapters of this video so that you know what you want to watch and what and all I'm going to be covering. You're more than welcome to skip and move to any other part that you want. But if you want to watch the whole video, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Okay, so as you can see, we have a lot to cover in this video, so let's get started. So I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about the types of assignments. Now, usually there are three types. There are whiteboarding sessions, which range from 40 minutes to 1.5 hours. Whiteboarding sessions are sessions that are interview rounds when you're interviewing for companies. It's a very popular method and it's something that every company adopts today. Number two is take-home assignments. These usually range from 2 to 5 days. Of course, it can be more than that. It can be less than that. But generally, this is the thing. You're given a take-home assignment and then you're supposed to solve it and then present your designs later. And then you have personal projects, which takes around 1 to 2 months. These are projects that you do when you don't have anything in your portfolio and you're looking to get an interview with a company. So this is about it. Now, the next thing I want to cover is what are very poor problem statements or what are poor projects to have in your portfolio. And these are things that I don't recommend. And we're going to look at what are good problem statements in this entire video. I've got a bunch of them covered over here and you're going to see actually what a good problem statement looks like. But I'm going to break this down so that you get a lot more clarity because there's a lot of misconception and a lot of misunderstanding about how things work. Now, there are three types of problem statements that I highly don't recommend you have. EdTech, e-commerce, food tech, news apps, generic apps that are out there do not make any problem statements on that. And I'm going to give you an example. And then you have landing pages. We see a lot of people working on landing pages. So landing pages are probably the worst projects to have in your portfolio. And I'm sorry, I'm being very firm on this, but I have a very strong opinion on landing pages. And landing pages do not demonstrate your product thinking capabilities. So please do not have them in your portfolio. And then you have online problem statement generators, which again make no sense. And I'm going to show you why as well. So let me take an example of the first category. So here I have a problem statement. Let's say you have to design an e-commerce app to buy gaming equipment. All right. Now, so there's something that people need to understand what product design is about. Now, let's say the esports industry is growing very high and people are getting to gaming a lot. So there's no platform or a dedicated platform to buy gaming equipment. Now, that's a need that human beings have, or people, basically gaming enthusiasts have. Now, if you are a designer, let's say you work for that company, let's say you're a designer, you're going to be designing pretty much these flows. There's going to be a browse flow. There's going to be something of a home screen. Then you have a search flow. There's going to be a filter flow. You're going to have a payment and checkout flow, and then probably a profile screen and a couple of additional screens, right? Now, designing these screens is not at all hard because all I have to do is just look at 5 other apps, understand the common patterns, and then recreate it this way. Now, you can be creative in the way you do UI design, which is fine. That makes you a better UI designer, but that's not what product designers are known for. Product designers have to do a lot of things other than just UI design. So if you have a project like this, it's not going to demonstrate your product thinking. Now, somebody who has to design this is going to be of an entrepreneur or a product manager. They are going to be thinking about things like, how do I procure it? What's going to be the pricing strategy? Should it be a subscription model? What is the demand and supply? How do I do advertising? This is more of a problem statement to entrepreneurs and product managers and not product designers per se. And I've seen a lot of case studies that people put out talking about these news apps or education apps where the only thing you can do is just watch courses. Now, designing an edtech app is very similar to designing an e-commerce app, and there's not much that you can innovate or change because these patterns are set and the mental models of the users have been set already. Now, coming to the third one, which is online problem statement generators, let me tell you why they don't work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for the first link that I find, which is a problem statement generator. All right. And this one problem statement generator that I have. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and quickly filter for UI UX, and I'm going to say digital products. Okay. Now let's see what sort of problem statements it generates. Okay. So first of all, this is not at all a problem statement. Design a button style for Bentley, which is a company that makes cars. Like, these don't make sense. The thing is, as product designers, our job is to solve real problems and make the world a better place, right? So this absolutely does not help you demonstrate your product thinking skills. Let's try more. A settings page for a bakery in Edmonton. Just one screen, and that too settings with no proper problem that is defined, makes no sense to have in your portfolio. An order form, right? So these are pretty much things that you can do to work on your UI design skills and improve your visual design skills, information architecture, hierarchy, colors, typography. This makes sense, but these are projects you should not have in your portfolio when you're presenting or interviewing for companies, because these don't demonstrate product thinking skills. I can go on, and you can see 4 simple icons, simple page visit, a login page, a web UI kit, a 4-word page. None of these make actual sense. Right? And you can go to pretty much any other online generator and look for it, and it won't make sense because you need to solve real problems and not fictitious problems. Anyway, let's continue back. Now there's another type of problem statement that a lot of people do, and I personally enjoy these, and it's good to have as a problem statement, and it's good to have this if you're a beginner who is just starting out, but there are some terms and conditions. So there are a lot of people who do redesign projects, and when I started my career, I did a redesign project and I used that to get my first job. But the thing is, you need to do it correctly. Now, what are the things you should and should not do? Do not redesign popular apps like WhatsApp or Instagram, because these have been designed by hundreds of designers who have a lot of data and analysis and research, and they're actually solving problems on a day-to-day basis. And just redesigning this with no objective makes no sense. Now, even if you have an objective, the objective should not be to make it look prettier. Now, again, if you're looking to just improve your UI design skills, you can definitely go ahead and do that. But if you want to become a product designer and have good projects in your portfolio, just revamping the UI doesn't make any sense. The objective of a redesign should be to improve the overall experience, which means that the user should be able to perform tasks better and faster, and it needs to improve metrics. Now, we're going to get into metrics a little bit more detail in the future part of the video, but there needs to be a very valid objective. You can even try to add new useful and helpful features to make it more useful. That improves the experience, right? So this shows your entire product thinking skills. Now, with that being said, if you have any problem statements that you are thinking about or you want to work on, you're more than welcome to DM me on Instagram. I'm more than happy to brainstorm with you and help you figure out ideas. My Instagram will be linked below in the description, so make sure to check that out. Okay, so now let's look at the categories of problem statements that you typically get as take-home assignments, or these are even things that you can work on as a personal project. And I've put them into multiple categories with an example so that you get better context. Right, so let's start with the first one. It's a B2C mobile app or a web app. So an example is design a mobile product experience that makes it safe for women to find the ideal roommate in your city, right? So this is going to be used by women who are probably going to be single because they're looking for a roommate, and this could be working professionals, these could be single women, and this app is for that. Then we have B2B or B2B2C, mobile app or a web app, and I'll give you an example of what is B2B and what is B2B2C. Design a system to help healthcare workers, especially the receptionist, who is the touch point for everyone. Right now, these are vague problem statements. We're going to get into more details about how to frame it, but I've just taken one line and presented that to you. Now, this is a B2B problem statement, mainly because if you are a company who is, let's say, making this product, you're going to be selling it to the healthcare workers. And the healthcare workers, probably pretty much like in a hospital or a clinic, is a business itself because they have other consumers. So you're selling it to the business and not the customers. You're not selling it to the patients, you're selling it to the business. And then you have B2B2C. And what that means is design a mobile product experience where sports centers can rent out their courts to the general public. So what that means is, let's say there's a court and there's a platform where the court can list out the courts that it has available with the time slots, with the duration. And if me as a person, as a customer wants to play in that particular court, I have to use their platform to book the court. So in this scenario, there are 3 people using the product, and in this scenario, there are 2 people using the product. So that's the difference between B2B and B2C. Let's move forward. Then you have an internal tool, right? This internal tool means that you are a designer working in that company and only the company is going to be using this tool, right? So let's look at this. You have to create an application for one of the best car selling facilities in India. The users are salespeople who are not tech savvy or not highly educated. What they do is when a customer walks in, the salesperson greets them, understands the requirements, and basically this is just more of the problem statement. But what you can see over here is that this application is used by the car selling person for its internal employees and nobody else gets to use it. And also this is not going to be sold to anybody. This is made for the internal company itself. And then you have statistics dashboard, and dashboards are probably very common problem statements as well, which basically is a list of statistics. You can perform a lot of tasks. You can look at insights, sort of like a data analysis tool in a way. Design a desktop app dashboard for a general practice doctor. And then we have a new feature for an existing app. So let's say you design a feature in WhatsApp that helps better organize your contacts and chat threads. So you're designing a new feature for an app that already exists. And then you have improving the experience of an existing feature. So let's say you rethink the onboarding experience of a neobank app with the intent of increasing the number of users onboarded and decreasing the time taken and drop-offs when finishing the onboarding experience. So the experience already exists. It's a feature that already exists, but you are just going to go ahead and improve the user experience. And then you have other things like hardware integrated user interface. So what that means is design a UI for a kiosk in a shopping mall to buy customized flavor of bubble tea, right? So what this means is there's a hardware that is linked to it, which is basically the kiosk. And then it's pretty much like an ATM, for example. And then you have fictitious app concepts, which are quite crazy. And these are very rare, but I've seen people still do this. It's the year 3000, design an app that lets you teleport, right? Again, I'm just giving you like a general idea, but this is not how problem statements are to be defined. Now I'm going to do a very small plug here. If you haven't checked out my Instagram account, I regularly post problem statements, and these are more like design briefs and not problem statements as such. Ideally, you have to figure out what problems you want to solve, but I give you some sort of a guide and a brief where you can go ahead. I give a lot of context and additional information and things like that. So you're more than welcome to check it out. I've got around 17 problem statements so far, and I will continue to post more. So you can pick these up as practice assignments if you want to work on them. Okay, so now let's understand how much time do you allocate for solving this entire problem statement, because there are many steps involved. Now, I've broken this down to 3 core steps, and I'm going to tell you how much time to spend on it and give you some more clarity as well as to why. Now let's assume that you have 30 hours. So let's say you have 3 days to submit your take-home assignment, right? And let's say you're going to spend 10 hours each day. So that comes up to a total of 30 hours. Now, the first step is breaking down the problem statement. Now, I see a lot of people who directly jump to visual design or directly jump to research, but it's very important to do step number 1, which is breaking down the problem statement. And I'm going to cover each of these 3 steps in detail. So don't worry, I've got your back. Now, what does breaking down the problem statement mean? It means dissecting the problem statement into multiple buckets and trying to understand the core problem. What is the objective of doing this? What is the impact of doing things? When I do this project, or let's say this becomes a live feature or a live app, what happens, right? There's a problem that has to be solved, and that's what product designers do. On this, you want to spend a maximum of 10% of the time that you have. And in this case, it's 3 hours. Okay. So you want to spend maximum 3 hours on this. Then you have step number 2, which is defining the user and the user story. And this involves a lot of your research, which is talking to users, gathering insights, some sort of a competitive analysis, maybe reading some stuff online and things like that. Now, I've seen people who spend so much time on this step. And let me tell you this, research is overrated. I'm not saying research is not important or you should not do it or research is wrong. A lot of people don't know how to do research and they spend so much time on it because they don't know how to do the research. So you want to spend, and I'm going to obviously give you examples and show you how to do it. You want to spend a maximum of 10 to 20% on this, which is around 3 to 6 hours for a 30-hour example, not more than that. And let me tell you this, the less amount of time you spend on this, the better it is. I'm not saying you spend very less time on this, you spend a reasonable amount of time, but cap yourself based on the percentages that I've given. And then finally, we have the most important thing, which is identifying solutions and designing. And of course, this involves wireframing and making high fidelity mockups. And this does not include prototyping because prototyping is not a part of product design thinking as such. It is what product designers still do, but I'm not considering that part over here. So you want to spend the rest of the time, which is around 70 to 80% on this, which comes up to around 21 hours minimum 21 hours. Okay, so now let's go a little bit deeper and try to understand problem statements a bit better. Now, usually there are 3 types of problem statements other than the categories of that I showed you. So this is the close-ended problem statement. So this is to design an app for parents to reward their children for doing chores, right? So the thing is, it's very close-ended. The problem, the objective, all that is defined where you're trying to reward children. And it's a little easier to solve compared to open-ended problem statements. Right? And I'm going to show you an example of that as well. So here in the open-ended, design an experience for a popular furniture company that wants to start selling custom-made personalized furniture. Now here, the users are not clearly defined. Why the company wants to get into making custom furniture is not defined. It is a little bit vague and a little open-ended. Now this is also a valid problem statement. And then finally, we have something that's very open-ended, which is like pet care is a $60 billion market. Think of a product that could capitalize the demand for these needs, for these kind of services, right? So this is super open-ended that we don't know who the users are. We don't know what the problem is. We don't know anything as such. Now, the advantage of these kind of problem statements is that it will actually truly show you your ability to think as a product designer. It will help you demonstrate your product thinking skills. But the disadvantage is that obviously it's very hard and it's going to take time to even figure out what you want to solve, who you want to solve for, what problems you want to encounter, right? So these are 3 things I just thought I would show you to give you more clarity on the various buckets these problem statements can fall into. Okay, so now let's get into the real stuff. Step number 1 is to prep the problem statement. And I'm going to give you what these buckets are and obviously show you a real example as well on how you can do this for your problem statement. Now, the first one is to identify what type of product is it. Is it an app? Is it a web app? Is it an internal tool? Basically, all the categories that I showed you before, the 7 categories, the first bucket is to put that into that. The second step is to identify the core problem. What is the main high-level problem? Now, you don't need to get into details of this. You just need an overall problem that you're trying to solve. And you need to be able to put it into words that make sense. Now, understanding the main list of problems is a part of step 2, which is not research per se, which also includes research. But we will get into that in step 2. The third step is to understand the core user or your users. Now here you want to be very detailed with useful information that will help you drive design decisions. And again, obviously I'm going to show you an example. If it is important to understand the real life scenario the user would be in, then make note of that. An example of that would be, let's say you're designing a feature for a ride sharing app, then you need to consider the user's real life scenario as well. Let's say you're designing an app for the delivery people of a courier company, right? You need to consider the real life scenario, the environment they're going to be in. So this also sometimes becomes a part of the user. Next, you have constraints and assumptions. And usually these are given in the design briefs. These could be tech constraints. These could be business models, anything that needs to give you more clarity for you to solve the problem. These are usually given in the problem statements. And assumptions are things that you can assume if it is not provided to you. Now we're going to look at assumptions a little bit later, but this is constraints if you have any. And the last and the most important thing, which is usually not given in the problem statement, because this is what makes you a product designer. You have to figure out what these are, which is basically the metrics that are going to be measured. Now, I've put them into 3 categories of metrics, and these are not, laws that exist. These are just for easy understanding. I've put them into 3, and I'm going to give you an example of that. So the first one is a direct metric, which is very simple stuff like conversion rate, task success rate, retention. Then you have an indirect metric, which is like revenue, brand recognition, goodwill, things like that. And then you have another one, which is global impact, which is easy. Let's say, for example, easy access to a service to the general public. Let's say you're making healthcare more accessible to the general public. Let's say you're making insurance more accessible to the general public. So this is sort of like a global impact that you're doing. Now, you don't have to define what the metrics are for each of these categories, because it totally depends on the problem statement that you get. Now, if you want to learn more about this, there's a video that I personally love and something that I actually learned a lot from. And I'm going to link that down in the description, which gives you a list of the metrics and the categories they fall in. And it's a very nice video to watch. So highly recommend that you check out that video. Link will be in the description. Okay, now let's take an example of this and see if we were given a problem statement, what would we put in these 5 buckets? Now I'm going to show you 2 examples, and this is the first one. So let's say you need to design an interactive chat experience for a luxury hotel. Now, by the way, this is one of the problem statements that I came up with when I was staying in a hotel and I really felt the need for it. You can find this on my Instagram page and you can read more about it if you're interested in solving this problem. So I'm just going to go ahead and just reduce the opacity so we can do it. So the first is a type of product. So let's say you're designing a chat experience inside Hilton's mobile app. So you're designing sort of like a new feature inside Hilton's mobile app that already exists. The second is the core problem. Why are we designing an interactive chat experience for this? What is the problem that we are trying to solve? So let's say it takes time for guests to get certain information or a request fulfilled by the hotel staff. Let's say you want information about your stays or the price, or you want to order some food, or you have some questions about the Wi-Fi isn't connecting, you want room service. There could be a lot of these requests or information that you need, right? And it takes time for guests to get this information or get the request fulfilled, right? So we want to reduce that. That is the problem that we are trying to solve. Now, this is again at a top level. In further stages, you want to get much more deep into it, but give yourself like a core problem to start with. The third is, who are the core users? Obviously, it's going to be the guests of the hotel who are going to download the app. And then you have the hotel staff who are also going to be using this app. But in this case, we can actually get rid of the hotel staff because we're going to be designing the experience for the guests of the hotel and not the hotel staff per se. The hotel staff is going to be looking at a very different UI than what we are solving over here. Here we are primarily solving for the guests of the hotel. Now here again, right, you can think about multiple things such as their age, their gender, their status and things like that. But I think this is for anybody who just has a mobile phone and has the app installed. And obviously you need internet connection, which is available in the hotel. So just keeping it very general in this case, such as guests of the hotel, is more than enough. And the fourth one is constraints and assumptions. Now you can sometimes skip this if you don't have anything to say. So obviously one assumption is that an internet connection needs to be there at all times, and then the staff personnel should be at the reception at all times, right? Now you can get rid of this assumption or a constraint if you design a mobile app for the hotel staff as well, who can just pretty much reply to anybody's concern anywhere, anytime, right? So it's up to you what you want to do with it. And then finally, metrics that are to be measured. This is where things get really interesting. So let's try to understand what happens if we design this interactive chat experience. So what happens is, let's say there's a business goal where the business says, hey, we need to get more people to join the loyalty program. So how do we do that? Now, this is quite like a high level or an indirect business level goal. And what happens is it makes people happy once we introduce this chat experience because their time gets saved. Their requests get fulfilled faster and easier, and they don't have to always reach out to the hotel by calling the landline or visiting the front help desk every time they have a query, right? So this improves the entire experience of staying in the hotel. It improves the brand image, and people are more likely to join the loyalty program because they are going to want to stay in this hotel every time they go to a new city or they are on vacation. People would end up recommending this to others. So obviously there can be some sort of a referral program and people could end up referring. Now, obviously this is something we may not be able to measure, but this is also something that can be improved. And lastly, the time spent on repetitive tasks for the staff reduces, right? So if the staff has to keep providing the same information to people again and again and have to coordinate between multiple departments of the hotel, a lot of time gets wasted. So maybe this interactive experience can reduce the time spent by the staff on these issues, and this results in increased productivity on other tasks, and they can even serve more guests faster. So as you can see, this is what you need to think about as a product designer. What is the impact of this? Now, there can be so many more than the ones that I've just mentioned here. And this is pretty much the reason why I said it's not good to, work on landing pages or make these generic apps which are not really solving a problem that helps a business. You're just filling a need that is there in the market out there, and that's not your job as a product designer. Anyway, I'm going to give you another example of a real project that I worked on in the first company that I worked at. So here it is. So the objective was to design an internal tool for an edtech company to manage educators and their courses. So basically this internal tool is going to be used by educators to list their courses and lessons and syllabus and notes and things like that. So let's look at it one by one, and I'm going to hide all of this so we can sort of look at them one at a time. Now the first bucket, obviously it was an internal web app, which means that only people inside the company would be able to use it. The second is core problems. What are the core problems? If we design and launch this tool, what are the core problems that it's going to solve? Now, there were too many manual processes involved to set up courses with the educators. Now, there's obviously an internal team called moderators who are going to sit with the educators and get this done. But there were too many manual processes involved which could have been easily automated. The second is there were too many tools being used to manage and keep track of things. It wasted a lot of time in small tasks which could be automated. And last, there is lack of transparency in miscommunication and untimely communication. And since most of these tasks are manual and there are too many people involved, there is going to be misunderstanding, and it's just going to be lack of transparency in what you communicate. So these were like the core problems. And bucket 3, right? Who are we designing this product for? It is mainly for moderators who are internal employees, and then you have educators who are actually going to teach. So let's say this is more of a support staff for the educators. Now there is also a case study on this that I have on my portfolio. You're more than welcome to check it out. Link will be in the description. And next one is constraints and assumptions. I don't really remember what they were, so I'm just going to keep it not applicable for now because this is a project that I worked on quite some time back, almost 3 years ago. And last, the metrics to be measured, right? So if we launch this internal tool, what would it do? This would increase the number of educators being managed by a single moderator as many tasks get automated, right? So if there's one moderator who is handling 5 educators, by introducing this tool, one moderator can end up handling 20 educators, and we can put out more courses, and we don't have to hire more moderators to get the job done. This will help us onboard more educators because with the limited staff we have, we can introduce in more educators because we can now assign more people to a single moderator. We can create more courses and more variety of content for people if we get in more educators. And obviously when we do all this, when we get more courses and more types of content and more educators, this will lead to increase in revenue for the company because we're going to be targeting a larger audience because we now have more educators and we have more types of content, right? So this is what bringing the internal tool would do for this company. So whenever you're working on a project, make sure you have these 5 buckets and you spend less than 3 hours, obviously considering the timestamp that we have, which is around 30 hours totally, and spend 10% of this maximum on it. And I think 3 hours, if you have a 30-hour deadline, is more than enough. Okay, the step number 2 is to define the user and the user story. And this is where you do a lot of research as well. What you ideally need to do is you want to get into the details of who the user is, what they want to do. Because anybody reading the problem statement should be able to empathize with the user and imagine how it feels to them. And there are basically 3 things. Who are they? What do they want to do? And why do they want to do it? Right? So you need to define the user and the user story. And obviously, we're going to take an example of this. So here I have a problem statement. Okay, and I'm going to go through the problem statement so that we will know how to create this user story. So you have to create an application for one of the best car selling facilities in India. We saw this problem statement before, but we're going to go into much more detail now. The users are the salespeople who are not tech savvy nor highly educated. They're also not well spoken in English. They come from all over India between the age group of 40 to 50 years old. So we're solving this for salespeople. What they do is when a customer walks in, the salesperson greets them, understands the requirements. They have to register the person or basically the customer on the mobile app with personal details of the car they're interested in, budget, finances, etc. Then the salesperson shows the car's features from this application, the top 5 features, videos, 360-degree view, any other additional details. And if the customer opts for a loan, check the eligibility, set reminders for follow-ups, and currently all of this is being done physically and manually on paper. You need to achieve digital transformation of an enterprise that works very smoothly on ground without disturbing its existing workflow. The goal is to create an application that is upgraded, yet the customer does not have to learn anything new. So this is one of the constraints that we have, right? So step number 4, bucket 4, constraint. The constraint is that this application should not make the user learn something new. And keep in mind, these are users who know their jobs very well. So this is clearly something that is given to us. And this is again something that is given clearly to us. Now, let's look at a simple persona, or basically what the user is. Mr. Raj is a salesperson of Mercedes-Benz. He's 40 years old and has been with the company for 10 plus years. He has a very good understanding of how the company runs. Sorry for the typo over there, you can just ignore that. How to talk to customers and how to provide them with a good experience. Mr. Raj is well versed in English and Hindi, but prefers to speak to customers in Hindi. So what we have done is we've understood this problem statement and we've gone ahead and created like a small preview or a story about Mr. Raj and who he is. Right? You're sort of creating this persona. Now your app or product or solution can be targeted toward multiple users. So if you have multiple users or multiple types of users you're targeting, you can mention that over here as well. But in this case, we're going to assume that every person is like Mr. Raj. And we are solving for Mr. Raj. And when we solve for Mr. Raj, we solve for every other salesperson who works at Mercedes-Benz. Okay. What do you do after you do this? Obviously, now we have the metrics that we measured, and I made this separately, and we're going to look at these metrics one by one to get an overall objective. Now, this is not a part of this step. This is stage 5, which comes over here, which is bucket 5. Sorry. I should probably call this bucket 5. The metrics that are to be measured, and that is supposed to be done over here. Okay. So you want to reduce the time spent on manual entry so the salesperson can spend more time with the customer. And this leads to increase in incentives for the salesperson for a successful sale, which means that if I'm handling 10 persons today, and in the future, after this tool arrives, I'm able to handle 50 people, my incentives would grow because I am now making a sale for more people. And in the end, the company also ends up generating more revenue. Increase in leads being collected, since the time taken to collect information is drastically reduced, and more the leads is more the chances of sales. Now, what this means is if I'm as a seller taking so much time to input information and note things down, I'm losing out on customers. So if this is a faster process, I can then make sure that anybody who comes into the showroom is in the database and becomes a potential lead. And then we have increase in sales when customers understand the true benefits of the car. And a lot of people don't really buy cars because the salesperson didn't do a good job of explaining it to them. But with this product, you can understand the true benefits of the car and you can actually visually see it. Now we're going to get into problems a little bit more detail in a little bit later, but these are the general metrics that can improve. And the last one is good organization of information inside the company, better management of resources as time gets saved, and increase in productivity of other employees. This also leads to better customer service and positive ratings for each salesperson. And we know that every salesperson is rated and they get a monthly bonus or an incentive and things like that along with their salary. So this also helps them provide a better service because they can do a good job. Right? Now there can be so many more metrics that can be measured, but these are just the 5 ones that I picked out. So now once we have all this, we need to find the problems, right? So what are the various methods to identify problems? First one is obviously you want to speak to users with user interviews or run some sort of a survey. That is something that's very good to do. Perform competitive analysis to understand the problems with an existing solution, right? So let's say there is already an app that BMW has and Tesla has, And you can sort of analyze and do comparative analysis of them and see how they do it and see if you can learn something from there or maybe do something better. And then this is one of my favorites, which is to map out a user journey, identify the problem areas and areas of improvements, steps that can be removed to make the process faster and better. So let's look at this. Now I have my FigJam file open over here, and I've made some sort of a simple user flow of how a typical experience will be, and I'm going to take you through it. So the first step is the customer enters the store, and a salesperson sort of assigns himself or herself to the customer. The salesperson inquires about the requirements of the customer, and I'm going to get into what these blue sheets are a little bit later. And then 4, you have a salesperson shows multiple options to the customer based on the needs they gathered. So it could be a few types of cars, it could be a particular car, whatever the need is. The 5th is the customer picks a car and says, hey, I want to check out this car. And the customer decides he or she wants to do a test drive. So that's another option. So this is an edge case, right? And I can actually write that down. I can say edge case. Okay. Now, if the customer does not want to do a test drive, they can go forward and say decides to purchase this car, including certain customization. All right. And a lot of people do that as well. Okay. And once the customer decides that he or she wants to purchase a car, a salesperson collects the contact details of the customer. And this is where the information is inputted into the tool that we are going to be creating. Okay. Now, if the customer does not really want to pay now or has second thoughts, the customer can leave the showroom and the salesperson will follow up after a few days. All right. And coming back to the flow, the customer is going to come back to the showroom and the salesperson is going to show multiple options or the information about the car, and then the process continues again, right? Now, this user flow is something that I made just out of my general knowledge, and I'm giving you an example and not really showing you what the true actual solution is going to be. Anyway, let's moving forward. The salesperson then checks out if the customer has an eligible loan. If the customer wants to purchase a car now, the customer makes a down payment and the car is booked, and then the customer waits for the delivery date, right? So what you see over here is a user journey, which not only involves things being done on the interface, but it's also the general environment. And I've noted things down like the car is being booked, the customer makes a down payment, which has nothing to do with the app that we are designing. Now, once you have like this general user flow of what happens currently, you can then go step by step and see if there is a need to remove a certain step, if there is a way to optimize a certain step, if there is a way to combine multiple steps, and where do the core problems exist at each step of the user flow. So in this case, let's say the step 3, you're collecting information about budget, style of car, color options, and things like that. And the problems that people usually face here is the salesperson forgets all the cars that fit the category, or it takes time to suggest the best cars because the person has to remember a lot of things and explain a lot of things. And sometimes it feels very random for customers and it becomes very confusing for them as well. So these are some problems that we figured out at step number 3. Okay. Now here's step number 4. What happens currently? And since the problem statement mentioned that they use paper a lot, the salesperson narrates or shows a paper file with features and pictures and stuff like that, which can be very boring, which means now the salesperson has to carry around a lot of these papers and files, and updating this is just going to be a hassle because doing it online on a digital platform is so much better. Right? And now the customer wants to do a test drive, right? So now the information about the test drive is scheduled here. All the information is stored, right? Now this is not really a problem, but is definitely a requirement that would be good to have. The next one here is the customer decides on the car, including customization, and customers often get confused and don't know how to make a choice on which car to buy. And the salespeople have a tough time convincing the users, right? Now, if the salesperson does not do a good job of convincing the users, then the users are not going to purchase the car and they're probably going to go for some other car which is of a different company. So you're losing a customer over there. Now, if there was a way to go ahead and help the customer do some sort of an analysis or some sort of a match percentage for each car based on the requirements, this can help them to figure out which car they want to buy if they are confused. So that's a really nice problem that can be solved with this product. Now, I don't know what the solution is, but we just in the stage of getting questions and problems. And the next one is the salesperson collects contact details of the customer, and all these information can be stored as well. This ensures that information does not get lost, information does not get misused, and things like that. So once you go ahead and prepare this user flow, you want to go to each step and find out what are the various problems that exist at that stage. And once you've made a list of problems, you then want to go ahead and create a user story. So what does a user story look like? So I'm going to come over here and we'll look at the user story. So, and I've just made like a very brief draft. Mr. Raj wants to quickly be able to find a list of recommended cars so that he can offer a good selection of choices. Make note of the customer's preferences so that he can show the features, benefits, videos on the iPad and explain it better to the customer. Find a way to help the customer make an informed and a satisfactory decision so that he can close a sale, right? So basically a user story here combines three things. Who are they? What they want to do, and why do they want to do it. Now, the most important thing here to understand is that you need to be able to link the problems, what the user wants to do, with the business metrics. Now, solving this problem improves which metric? Solving the need of a user improves or supports which metric? You need to know, if I go ahead and say, Raj wants to quickly be able to find a recommended list of cars. This is what he wants to do. The why is so that he can offer a good selection of choices. What does this improve, right? Now you want to go to the list of metrics that you did and figure out which of these metrics is going to be improved if we solve that problem. Now that's your job as a product designer that you have to do. So now how much time do you have to spend on this? That's around 10 to 20% max. So that is 3 to 6 hours max, which is a good exercise to do. Now, one last thing that you can probably do in this step is something called as framing how might we statements. Now, how might we statement is probably like a framework that is very, very, very popular. There are a lot of articles about it. There is a lot of YouTube videos about it. So you can, learn more about it. But basically the whole crux is you form or frame a problem statement in a very concrete and direct manner without talking about the solutions, right? Now, ideally what you want to do is if you've actually gone ahead and made your user stories and personas properly and you figured out the core problems, you can sort of skip this step, but it's a good practice if you still want to do it, right? So I'm going to give you one simple example of it. And basically what you want to do is how might we is basically like a different version of just writing down your user story, right? So for example, if you take the last one, Raj wants to find a way to help the customer make an informed and satisfactory decision so that he can close a sale, right? Now, if you want to convert that to a how might we statement, you can say, how might we assist the customer to make an informed decision about which car to purchase, right? So now here you're sort of telling what the problem is. You're trying to figure out how might we enable a person to perform a specific goal, but we are not mentioning the solution or the answer because we don't know what that is. We just know what the problem is. So I highly recommend learning about making how might we problem statements, and you can make this for each of the problems that you have. It's definitely helpful, and it's going to be some sort of a guide for you when you're solving problems so that you don't get lost when designing. And now finally, let's get into the third step. Okay, so now in the third step, this is where you want to spend maximum amount of time. And in our case, minimum of 21 hours for a 30-hour deadline. So how do you identify solutions and design? So now you figured out who the users are, what their problems are, and why we need to solve those problems, and how does it help the company when we solve the problem. And now it's time to find solutions to each of those problems. So obviously you want to brainstorm possible solutions. And to do that, you can do competitive analysis of other products and see how they solve problems. You can discuss with your team members. You can work with other designers. And this is where you come in. This is what designers have to do. We solve problems. And once you do that, and once you have a list of problems, you can then go ahead and create a user flow of the solutions. And then you obviously end up doing wireframing and then high fidelity polished design. Now I have videos on UI design specifically in this playlist and in this course. So just go to the course. You'll see a lot of videos on auto layout, colors, typography. So that will help you learn good visual design. So make sure to check that out. Now I'm going to give you an example of the types of solutions. So let's say you have to design a trip planner app to effectively plan your group travels. Now, this is again a problem statement that's available on my Instagram, so you can definitely check that out for more information if you want to work on it. So now I'm just in the last stage, obviously, and all of us have tried to plan trips with our families and friends, and we all face a lot of problems, right? So what are the possible solutions? And obviously you can do this through brainstorming. And if you know what the problem is, what is the solution for it? So you can create and manage multiple groups in one app, right? And what is this solution solving? Today, a lot of people use WhatsApp and Telegram, and you have a lot of groups that you create with it. And these are mixed with your personal chats and personal groups, so it becomes really messy. You can set a budget limit, right? So everybody knows at a particular time what is the budget that you want to set, or how much is a particular trip going to cost. And then an ability for everybody to share links, tag them based on type, such as Airbnb links, websites for tour plans, activities, Instagram post links, restaurant recommendations, and things like that. So instead of having all of these on WhatsApp, which is what people do, and just random links thrown everywhere, you can have a dedicated place to check out all these and document stuff. Then there could be a checklist of things to be done by a certain person. For example, one person is in charge of booking stays. One person is in charge of booking the train tickets. One person is in charge of finding out what activities to do. So everybody knows who has to do what they have to do, and it just ensures better transparency. So that's a problem that's being solved. And there's a dedicated chat room for each type of conversation. If you're doing it on WhatsApp or Telegram, a lot of the conversations are going to get mixed if there are 10 people in the group, right? So having a dedicated chat room for each conversation makes it easy to make decisions. And obviously there can be a polls feature because everybody is going to give their own opinions and feedback. So having a polls feature to collectively gather information and come to a conclusion is helpful. And then obviously there are going to be places where you can add photos to the gallery, things you want to see, places you want to visit, and a lot of these stuff. Now there can be so much more, right? These are just things that I spend the 10 minutes figuring out. So this is where you want to spend the maximum amount of time on. You figure out solutions, and then you start designing high fidelity mockups. Or basically, when I say mockup, I mean a screen, a flow of tasks to do. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. And I'll see you guys in my next video. So till then, take care and bye-bye.